bookish friends, my name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be diving into all the books that I end up reading during the Historical Fiction Readathon. Alright, so this Historical Fiction Readathon is running from July 14th through the 20th, and it is being hosted by Christy from Christy Reads a Lot and Tori from Novel Life. I have a book club called the Leave It to the Pros book club, and I'll leave all of those linked in the description below. So I just wanted to film my experiences reading these historical fiction books and trying to meet all the prompts. Okay, so the way that this readathon works is that there are 6 different prompts that you have to try to reach by the end of the week. So the first prompt is to read the group book, then we have to read a host book recommendation, read a historical romance, read a historical fiction set in the country you live in, read a historical fantasy, read a historical fiction set in the 1950s, read a book from your library, and read a book that's longer than 350 pages. Alright, so the group book is A Promise to Arlette by Serena Burdick, and this actually fulfills several of the prompts. So this is the group book, that is one of them. It's also a historical fiction that's set in the country that I live in. It's set in the United States, so it fulfills that prompt. And it's a historical fiction that's set in the 1950s, so it fulfills all 3 of those prompts. Another book that I have on my TBR for this week is Vera by Carol Edgarian, and that fulfills the prompt of reading a book that's in your library. For the prompt that says read a host book rec, I'm hoping to read Next Year in Havana by Chanel Clayton. I know that Christy from Christy Reads a Lot really loves Chanel Clayton's writing, and this is one of the books that I have on my 25 books to read in 2025 list, so I'm really hoping to get to it this week. For the next prompt, which is to read a historical romance, I have Surrender of a Siren by Tessa Dare on my TBR. This is the second book in the Wanton Dairymaid series, and I read Goddess of the Hunt earlier this year. I'm slowly making my way through Tessa Dare's backlist, and this is the next book that I need to pick up, so it felt like the perfect choice for this prompt. For the prompt that says to read a historical fantasy, I have These Violent Delights on my TBR. I've had this on more than 5 TBRs in the past, so I definitely need to get around to this one. It's set in 1920 Shanghai, and it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling, so it sounds super exciting, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to fulfill the prompt by reading this book and also get it off my TBR where it's been for years. These Violent Delights also fulfills another prompt, and that is to read a book that's over 350 pages. And since it's only a week-long readathon, I'm definitely going to be reusing books to fulfill some of these prompts. I'm hoping to get to all 5 of these books, but if that doesn't end up working out, I won't be too disappointed because it is quite an ambitious TBR. I don't tend to read too many books in a week, so it is a little bit unrealistic to get to all of these, but I did give myself just a few options, and hopefully I will get to at least 2 or 3 of these. Alright, now that I've introduced you to the readathon and my TBR, I'm going to take you along for some of my adventures this week. I do have a couple of errands that I need to run today, so I'm going to go run those errands, and I'm going to start listening to my first audiobook for this readathon. I think I'm going to be starting with the historical romance, so the first book that I'm going to pick up is Surrender of a Siren by Tessa Dare. So I'm going to listen to that as I go along to do my errands, and I'll take you along with me. Alright, now I'm parked in my car, and I'm going to go run a couple of errands. So first I need to return something, and then I need to get a book sent out, so I'm going to go and do that. Alright, so I made it to the post office, and now I'm going to go send out that book, hopefully before the rain picks up again, because it's been super rainy here recently. But I'm gonna go do that, and then I'll give you an update on Surrender of a Siren. So I just got that book sent out, and now I'm gonna go over to the UPS store to make my return. But I started Surrender of a Siren by Tessa Dare, and I'm just feeling confused right now. Like, I don't really know what's happening. I'm at the very beginning of the book. It's just the introduction, so I've kind of forgot what happened at the end of Goddess of a Hunt, and it seems like we did a little bit of a time jump from where we left off with Goddess of the Hunt, so hopefully we'll get a little bit more of an explanation of what exactly is going on. I do remember that the main character, Sophia, was getting engaged at the end of Goddess of the Hunt, and now she's broken off that engagement, but I don't really know what else is going on. Alright, so I've made it to right outside the UPS, and it has started raining now, unfortunately, so I'm just waiting for the rain to slow down a bit, but I'm really liking Surrender of a Siren so far. I know I'm just at the very beginning of the story, but I like how it's going. I think it's so interesting that the heroine is gonna go on a sea voyage. I feel like I haven't read a lot of historical romances where the heroine goes on a voyage or goes on a journey, so that sounds so fun. I don't know what Tortola is, but I'm gonna look that up because it's like the destination that she's gonna go to. And so far there's a really ruggedly handsome owner of the ship and handsome captain, and they're brothers, and I'm just excited about this. I am so eager to dive into this. I know that for most people that have read the Wanton Dairymaid series, the second book has been their favorite, so hopefully I will love it too. Alright, so I finished my errands a few hours ago, and now I'm back for another update. So So I'm in chapter 3 of Surrender of a Siren, and I'm starting to remember some things that happened in Goddess of the Hunt. We're getting a little bit of recapping of what happened in that book and why the main character Sophia has ended up in this situation where she's broken off her engagement and she's trying to travel to Tortola. I also just wanted to mention that I just started Vera by Carol Edgarian. I'm on page 7 or 8, so I'm at the very beginning of this, and I'm hoping to get a decent chunk of this read tonight. This book isn't too long. I think it's around 300 pages, so it should hopefully be one that I can finish in the next day or two. Alright, so today is Wednesday, July 16th, so it's officially the third day of the Historical Fiction Readathon. Since it's now evening time, I wanted to give you a brief update on what I've been up to today, so I'm going to insert some clips from earlier today when I took Teddy for a walk, so you'll see some of those clips after this. Also, I just wanted to give you a brief update on my reading for the day. So earlier when I went on my walk, I was listening to the audiobook for Surrender of a Siren by Tessa Dare. I'm at about the 60% mark of the book, so I've made some pretty decent progress. I'm hoping to finish it early tomorrow, but I'm really enjoying the plot line. It has like a false identity storyline going on, and it's really interesting. It's got like a false identity plotline going on, and it's keeping me hooked all the way through, which I find interesting. I don't know how believable I find the romance between Sophia and Gray in this one, but I do love the setting though, and I love that it's all been set out at sea. I don't see that a lot in historical romances, so it's been really fun to read about that, and all the hijinks that happen on their journey, like, it's been wonderful. I love Tessa Dare's wit. It's really coming through in this story, and I'm having a really great time so far. I did want to mention though that Sophia has had like a false identity the entire story so far. So she's been pretending to be Miss Turner, who is going to be a governess on the island of Tortola. At the beginning of the story, we learned that Sophia has kind of jilted her fiance and she has run away, so she's trying to travel to Tortola to escape her problems. And I'm a little nervous for how Tessa Dare is going to resolve the whole false identity storyline in this one, but I'm hopeful that she'll do it really well. Fingers crossed that things turn out alright. Unfortunately, I don't really have any updates for Vera by Carol Edgarian. I haven't read too far into it. I think I'm on page 10 so far, so I don't have any thoughts on it yet. Hopefully I can finish it tomorrow, so then I'll have Vera and Surrender of a Siren crossed off. I'm a little behind on the readathon prompts so far since I did not start on Monday, so I'm hoping to catch up soon. Alright, welcome back. So today is Thursday, July 17th. We are currently on the fourth day. Yes, the fourth day of the readathon, and I've made really decent progress on Surrender of a Siren. I am about an hour and a half away from finishing it, but so far I'm really enjoying it. I have grown to really enjoy the romance in the last bit of the story, but I did mention that I was nervous for how the false identity plotline would be resolved in it, and so far we're in the midst of still trying to resolve the problems from that. I think I just had some issues with the fact that the heroine thought that everything would be okay because she and the hero have been very intimate with each other, and that's not how that works. Obviously, if you lie to someone, they're not going to trust you very willingly, and it's going to lead to a lot of problems in the relationship. So I was really frustrated with the female main character for hiding her identity for so long in the story. She doesn't go by Sophia, she goes by Miss Turner throughout a majority of the plot, and she just hides everything about herself, so she's not really being genuine with the male main character, and I found that to be extremely grating, but I am liking the story otherwise. I believe we're nearing their destination, but there's been some really fun like pirate hijinks going on, which is always exciting to read about. He's trying to be on the straight and narrow, so he's trying to make sure that he's following all the correct rules and he's not doing any piracy or anything sanctioned like that. And it's really funny because it seems like trouble seems to follow Gray everywhere he goes, and I'm just really enjoying it. I'll update you one more time on this book with my final thoughts once I've completely finished it, but I'm enjoying it for the most part. Is it my favorite Tessa Dare book to this point so far? Definitely not, but I'm very glad to have read it. I also have an update for you on Vera by Carol Edgarian. I've read about a quarter of the way into the book, which is not as far as I would have liked to have gotten at this point, but I'll take it. So we follow Vera, who is the 15-year-old illegitimate daughter of a brothel owner. This is set in San Francisco in 1906, and if you know anything about San Francisco at that time, it underwent a major earthquake and a fire, so there's a lot of changes that are about to happen in the story. As you can tell, it's kind of focused on the earthquake earthquake and the natural disasters, if you can kind of see that on the cover. But we haven't gotten to that point yet. We've just been getting a lot of backstory on Vera's life, and she's really a person that likes to challenge societal norms. She is trying to pave her own path, and she's never felt like really wanted by her mother or by her adoptive family either. She is a very perceptive character. We can tell that even at 15 years old, she's very perceptive. She has a good grasp of things going on around her. Sometimes she doesn't fully understand what she's seeing because she's only a teenager after all, but she is pretty perceptive for her age, and she loves to observe people, which I think is interesting to note about her. So she has basically this like wisdom about her. She's like an old soul kind of vibe going on. And a cool thing about this is that she has some mixed ethnic heritage. The first chapter, like the first 2 pages or something, it's her talking about her biological mother and the fact that she could have a mix of like Persian blood, Mexican blood, like a bunch of different ethnicities mixed in there, which I thought was really interesting. I think that is really cool to read about. I don't read a lot of that in historical fiction, so I'm really enjoying this. Like I mentioned before, I'm reading this book for the prompt that is to read a book from your library. I've had this in my library for 4+ years, going on 5 almost, so I'm excited to get around to it. And I'm so glad that my TBR jar kind of brought this to the front of my mind and reminded me I had it, because it wasn't one that I was going to pick up anytime soon. It wasn't one that I was really gravitating towards, but I'm really enjoying it, so we'll have to see how the next 3/4 of the book goes, but it's going really good so far. I'm really liking this. One more quick note is that even at the beginning of the story, we're getting so much foreshadowing, and there's like this ominous foreboding feeling that's been building. So we're leading up to the earthquake, and Vera will make little like internal comments about how everything would soon be gone, or everything would be shattered, or like that this life was an illusion. So basically we're gearing up to this earthquake happening, and it's just slowly building. It's very subtle right now, but I expect that within the next 50 pages or so, things will start to heat up a little bit as we start to approach the halfway point of the story. But loving it so far. Such a great pick. I'm glad to have gotten to this. Alright, so I just wanted to update you on some of my plans for tomorrow. So tonight I will be still finishing Surrender of a Siren. That'll happen for sure. I'm hoping to read through the rest of Vera tomorrow to get that done, and then I will be picking up A Promise to Arlette, which is the group book for this readathon. So hopefully I can get that done, because I know that crosses off like 3 of the 8 total prompts. So then I will have, hopefully with those 3 books, 5 of the prompts crossed off, and that will leave 3 other prompts to figure out. I am trying to figure out the best use of my time to make sure that I achieve them all. So I'm gonna listen to the audiobook for A Promise to Arlette. That'll be 3 more different prompts. And then I know that These Violent Delights is a very long book, but that'll cover a book that's over 350 pages, and it's a historical fantasy, so that's another 2 prompts. And then I would just have to read maybe 1 more book to fulfill the last prompt, so fingers crossed that I can get them all done. Quick little life update. I did take my puppy Teddy to get neutered earlier today, so he is in the recovery process with that. I had such a chaotic day, so I didn't have a lot of time to update earlier. That's why all these updates are happening late at night tonight. And yeah, we're hoping that things turn out well for him and that he heals quickly. So tomorrow I'm thinking I'm gonna do a mini book haul for you guys, since I've received a few books in the mail this week. I thought that it would be really fun to share them with you. I did do a reading sprint tonight, and that was really fun to do. I had a great time. Thank you so much if you joined me, and if not, I definitely love to catch you in the next one. All of my reading sprints are also live on my channel, so you can check them out. But yeah, those are my plans for the next day or so. I'll see you when I have my next update tomorrow. Alright, so today is Saturday, July 19th, and it is the second to last day of the readathon. I'm so sorry that I didn't get around to updating you guys yesterday on my reading, but I'm gonna update you now on what I finished. So yesterday I started A Promise to Arlette by Serena Burdick. This is set in the 1950s in the United States, and it's set between like Massachusetts and California. But you also get some flashback chapters to Nazi-occupied France during World War II. It is a story following Ida Whipple and her husband Sydney, and they have this seemingly idyllic and perfect life in America in the 1950s. They're living that like suburban dream, but then Ida comes across a photograph from her past, and everything is shaken to its core, and we start to realize that there are a lot of fractures and problems in this seemingly perfect life that they have built together. So I didn't really know what to expect from this one. On the heels of reading The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, I didn't know if it's gonna live up to the same level of The Nightingale or if it's going to be something that was a little different. I think that the stories are very similar, so I would compare this one closely with The Nightingale, but I think that The Nightingale was just better executed. I like the complexity of some of the characters in A Promise to Arlette. Arlette in particular has just so many layers to her character, and I liked seeing Ida's journey. You get to see how her traumatic backstory and childhood affected her behaviors later on in life, both in her early adulthood and also in the current present day of the story. And I thought that was really intriguing to delve into. There is this theme of trauma and how that affects an individual through their life, and it is a very self-reflective novel, so I appreciated some of those aspects. I did think that the beginning of it was quite slow, so it took quite a while to get into the main plot of the story, and I didn't really know where we were going with it. It felt like the plot was just wandering, and it was very slowly meandering through, giving you this look into what their 1950s suburban life looked like, and we don't really get into the main plot of the story until like the second or third part. So I just thought that the beginning was a little drawn out, but I think it all came together well in the end of the story. Like I mentioned before, I definitely saw some similarities with The Nightingale. In particular, we see this main character named Ida, who is not Jewish, but she has like a Jewish best friend, Arlette, and their relationship is actually a little bit more than that at certain points in the story. They do have some romantic entanglements and involvements, and they have a very complicated relationship, but Arlette is Jewish, so that is kind of a looming threat to her in most of the story, and we don't really know what's going to happen with her. So that's kind of similar to The Nightingale, where Vion's best friend was a Jewish woman, and we didn't know what was going to happen with that storyline. But I will say it wasn't so focused on the concentration camps and the action happening in the war. It is more of a grounded story in the relationship between these two women, and then later on in the relationship between Ida and her husband Sydney and how that all evolved. So we don't get so much of what's happening with the war, but I will say there is a similarity in the sense that they are all in denial at the beginning. This is something that is also depicted in The Nightingale. At first, they really think that nothing is going to happen in France, that the Nazis are not going to take over, and then you slowly start to see this illusion shattering around them. So I think my favorite parts of this book were the parts that took place in the flashbacks. So we got to see the 1930s and 40s in flashbacks from both Sydney and Ida's perspectives, and I thought that was intriguing. It really gave us a lot of insight into both of their characters, but I found myself feeling just a little bit bored with some of the 1950s sections of the story. I think that they were a little too drawn out and long, and they didn't need to be that long, but that's just my personal opinion. I did find the narrative to be engaging for the most part, and I definitely didn't see the twist coming that happened at the end of the story. However, they didn't really astound or wow me in the way that I was expecting. I know a few other people in the readathon had already read the book and were surprised by it, but after reading The Nightingale and really being astounded by some of the twists in that book, I think that the twists in A Promise to Arlette were just not as intense or emotionally impactful to me. Maybe I've just grown used to some of the things that can appear in World War II stories, but I just didn't find them as deeply meaningful or poignant to me as I did in The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. But yeah, overall, I did like that we challenged some of these societal norms, and the journey that Sydney goes on in the 1950s was really interesting, as we see him trying to be more interactive and hands-on with his children in a time when that really wasn't happening, and we get to see that he isn't happy with where his life is, and he wants to feel more connected to Ida, his wife, and to his two daughters, which I thought was really beautiful. So overall, I enjoyed some of the character development and the introspection that is examined within the story, but I felt like the plot dragged a lot, and I just wasn't as captivated by this as I was by The Nightingale. So definitely I would recommend reading The Nightingale over A Promise to Arlette, but I think it was still enjoyable. We did get to see like a unique perspective or take on World War II as we follow these artist friends of Arlette and Ida's in the story, and we get to see the effects of the war from that more American lens through Sydney's eyes, and we get to see also Ida's perspective where she's seeking this new journey and adventure for herself as a young woman and get away from some of the abusive cycles that have been happening in her childhood and adolescence. So A Promise to Arlette fulfilled 3 different prompts for the readathon. First, it was the group book for the readathon, and it also fulfilled the prompts of being set in the 1950s, as well as a historical fiction that is set in the country that you live in. I did want to note a change that I made considering the time constraints of the readathon and the fact that it is ending tomorrow. So I am going to be counting Surrender of a Siren by Tessa Dare, not only for the prompt that says to read a historical romance, but also to read a host book recommendation, because I do know that Christy from Christy Reads a Lot really enjoyed this one. So I'm going to count it for that prompt as well in my quest to try to achieve all the prompts and goals before the end of the readathon. So that means that I only have 2 prompts remaining, and that is to read a historical fantasy and also to read a book that's in your library. Unfortunately, I don't have any updates on Vera by Carol Edgarian. I haven't made much more progress in the story beyond page 70 where I was the last time I updated you, but I am still hoping to finish this before the end of the readathon. It is about 300 pages, so I think I can do it, and this is definitely going to fulfill the prompt for a book that's in my library. I know I had also originally mentioned that I wanted to read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong for the historical fantasy prompt, but it's a really long book and I'm just not gonna have enough time to read it. So I am going to change my TBR pick for this, and I am going to try to read The Vampire of King Street Street by Asha Grayling. This audiobook is about 4 or 5 hours long, so it's definitely one that I can finish tomorrow, and I think it'll be a good option to dive into instead of These Violent Delights. So The Vampire of King Street is a historical fantasy, but it's got some mysterious elements to the story. It is a Gothic debut novel, so this is the author's first works, and we are following a new lawyer in 19th century New York who never expected that her first client would be a vampire who's been suspected of murder. So in this world, vampires are basically treated as like second-rate or second-class citizens. They are servants, so they work as butlers, maids, in all those positions in very wealthy households. They have to follow with a very strict set of rules, and they are viewed as less than, which is something that our main character can relate to, as she is the child of immigrants. So she needs the help of a journalist friend and a detective inspector to help prove that her client is innocent of the charges being brought against him. So winning the case will mean that the client will win his freedom, and it will also help establish the career of our main character as a successful attorney, but losing this case will cost her career and her client's life. It sounds like we're gonna dive into some social commentary in this book, and we're also going to dive into some paranormal history, which I think is going to be really fun. I love that it's set in 19th century New York. I think that's a really fun and exciting setting to explore, and I can't wait to dive into this one. I know it's like less than 300 pages, so it'll be perfect to read tomorrow. So I did mention on Thursday that I did get a lot of book mail this week, so I wanted to share that with you guys in this vlog. I didn't have the chance to do that yesterday, but I'll do that now. So the first book that I have to talk about is Island Creatures by Margarita Engel, and this is one that was sent to me by Simon Teen. So thank you so much to them for sending me a free copy of this book. So in this book, we follow Vida, who works at a wildlife rescue center in Miami, and she dreams of her childhood in Cuba. She specifically reminisces about her time spent with her best friend Adan, trying to save and rescue animals throughout the island. What she doesn't know is that Adan recently moved to Florida with his father and grandfather, and he's having to deal with living in a very tense living situation with the two of them constantly bickering and fighting with each other. They end up having a chance encounter with each other when they encounter a captive fox, and this leads to them rekindling their romance, which is a refuge in the chaos of their lives. They end up working at a zoo together that rescues rare species, and their love grows from here, but they find that this peace is temporary, and they're filled with a lot of distrust and loneliness. So they have to learn how to heal from their intergenerational trauma and then find a way to move forward in a positive light. This book sounds super cute. I think it's really going to delve into the themes of intergenerational trauma, loneliness, and loss. It feels like all of those things are going to be covered in this one, and I love that they are both going to end up working at the zoo. I personally have a big passion and love for animals, so I appreciate that they're trying to help rescue animals in this one. They're both big animal lovers, and I think that's going to be really sweet to read about. The next book that I have to share is The Unexplained Ghost by Adam Alsich Boardman. This was very kindly sent to me from Flying Eye Books, so thank you so much to them for sending me a copy of this. It looks like it would be the perfect Halloween read because it's kind of this graphic novel that delves into the topic of ghosts. So it seems like it really explores the lore of ghosts in this one, how they haunt dark hallways, and how they fascinated people for centuries. I think it's going to have some really stunning illustrations in this one, and I think that it'll be a really great read around Halloween time this year because I think it'll put me in the spooky mindset. The next book that I received is The Tilting House by Yvonne Lamasares, and I was very kindly sent this book by Counterpoint Press, so a big thank you to them for sending this book my way. So it's set in the summer of 1983, and Yuri has been living with her Aunt Ruth in Havana when a 34-year-old artist named Mariela comes from the United States and claims that they are sisters and they actually share the same biological mother. So in this one, we're following two estranged sisters that have a very complicated past, and they end up being reunited in 1990s Cuba, and they have to deal with family issues amidst the political upheaval happening. So after spending a lot of time in American orphanages, Mariela has returned to Cuba to reclaim her roots, and she's very spiteful and vengeful because she claims that this Aunt Ruth was actually her kidnapper, and she's very upset about being sent to America under Operation Pedro Pan. Yuri is both intrigued and repulsed by Mariela, and when Ruth is placed in jail for some unknown charges, they end up getting closer together, and Yuri finds herself more and more in Mariela's orbit. I think it's going to explore themes of identity, of family loyalty, political upheaval, all of that, and also the experiences of being an immigrant and wanting to feel connected to your homeland and be free of your past. I think that's going to be delved into in this book, and I think that it will make for a very powerful read, so I can't wait to read it. Okay, and then the last book that I wanted to share right now is called The Pack by Z.W. Taylor. This is the third book in the Moonblood saga, and I was very kindly sent this by Wattpad Books, so I want to say a big thank you to them for sending me a copy of this one. So it says that blood runs deep in the Alaskan wilds, but love may run deeper, and we're following Charlotte, who seems to have found her place within a werewolf pack in the backwoods of Alaska. However, there's still a lot of blood magic in the forest, and there's wolves appearing all over the state, so for the first time in a long time, her life feels safe, but there's a surprise arrival of someone new, and this is going to turn her life upside down. She's going to have to face new challenges and truths which will force her to question everything about her life, and she's going to have to make a life-altering decision, whether she protects the people she loves or she protects her heart. This sounds intriguing. I haven't read the first and second book in this series, but I definitely need to get around to them before picking this one up. I'm intrigued by this werewolf pack in Alaska. I don't really read a lot of supernatural stories, but I like to read more of them. And I haven't read any books set in Alaska, I don't think, before, so that would be a first for me. It also came with these really cute stickers, which I'll show you. So this is a wolf sticker right here, which has this beautiful like sunset or sunrise in the background. We also just have this like wolf howling sticker, which is stunning. And then we have this last wolf sticker, which is like multicolored. These are so beautiful, and I didn't even know that I was going to get these with the book, so they were a really nice surprise. All right, so today is Thursday, July 24th, and I'm back for one final update. I know it's been a little bit of time since the end of the readathon, so I'm going to cover what I ended up finishing and then give you my final thoughts. So sadly, I did not get to continue reading Vera by Carol Edgarian. I just did not have time to get around to finishing it, but I will definitely be finishing it before the end of the month, so you'll be seeing this in my July wrap-up, and then I'll end up giving you my final thoughts there. I was a little disappointed to not be able to finish this in time, but it's understandable considering the fact that the readathon was only a week long, and I had some other responsibilities and time constraints during the readathon as well. However, I did want to mention that I did end up getting to finish The Vampire of King Street by Asha Grayling. I really enjoyed this historical fantasy novel. I thought that there were some parts of it that were really interesting. In particular, I liked the discussion of vampires as they were being treated as these second-class citizens, and just all the vampire lore and history that we got in this was really entertaining to read about. I liked that we delved into the backstory of the vampire, who is one of the main characters or main focuses of the story, and we also got to dive into the main character Radhika's background a little bit, which was intriguing to me. I did think there were also some pacing issues though, because the beginning I think was very well drawn out and all of that, but by the end it felt like the author was just rushing to wrap things up, so it felt like it was very fast paced and it was just rushing to get to the conclusion without properly developing the ending. So I had like some issues with the pacing, but overall I thought it was quite enjoyable. I liked some of the character development we got, and especially the vampire lore. It's been a minute since I read a book that featured vampires in it, and I always enjoy a good historical fantasy. This is set in 19th century New York, and I really appreciated that background to it. I wish we had gotten a little bit more about what New York was like at that time and gotten some more historical elements. It was really more geared towards the fantasy, but I appreciated this for what it was nonetheless. It was a super quick read. It was under 300 pages, so it was perfect to read for the end of the readathon. I still want to definitely try to read These Violent Delights at some other points, but I'm glad to have given this book a go, and I was able to listen to a free audiobook copy from Libro FM, so I want to say a big thank you to them once again for providing me with an advanced listening copy of it. I did enjoy this, and this wasn't something that was high on my radar, so I'm glad that this readathon pushed me to branch out a little bit and give this one a go. I also wanted to share some more book mail that I've gotten since my last update. So I did end up receiving both The Bite and The Hunt by Z.W. Taylor, and I was kindly sent these by Wattpad Books, so thank you so much to them. I know that I originally mentioned receiving The Pack, which is the third book in the Moonblood saga, but then they ended up sending me the first and second book of the Moonblood saga as well. So The Bite is the first book, and it says that to escape her violent ex, Charlotte flees her home in the middle of the night with nothing but cash in her pocket. She's trying to shed her old self along the way, and she ends up finding herself alone in the Alaskan forest. So she's lost with just a burner phone, and she's missed her turn. She can't find the cabin that she was promised by a friend, and she has this like very eerie feeling about being in the woods alone, and she is attacked very brutally, and something ends up biting her in the leg, and this is a bite that will change her life forever. So like I mentioned before, the series is following werewolves, so I imagine that this is the bites that leads to her becoming a werewolf or some sort of supernatural creature. I'm so excited to dive into this trilogy of books. I don't know if there's going to be any more books to be published in the series, but I'm excited to try these out nonetheless. Okay, and then the second book in the Moonblood saga says that no one thought Charlotte would make it through her transformation to become a shifter. She becomes a werewolf in the previous one after she's attacked by werewolves in the Alaska woods, but they have underestimated her, and she is trying to find a place for herself to prove her worth within this world. She is going to be tested, and she has to figure out how to work with other members of the pack, even when they don't want her there, and has to figure out how to control like the inner beast inside. So she's going to uncover a lot of dark secrets, and she needs to figure out how to survive and stop time from running away from her and become a hunter. So I think that this book is going to be more focused on her journey as a werewolf, figuring out how to adapt to this new situation that she finds herself in. I think it sounds really cool. I am curious to read another series that focuses on werewolves. I haven't read a series that has a werewolf prominently in it in such a long time, and I'm trying to get more into fantasy again, and also like paranormal and supernatural books, because that's kind of a genre that I've neglected, and I think that is something that I would really enjoy. So next, I wanted to quickly mention Game Changer by Deanna Faison. This is one that I'm going to be featuring on my Bookstagram very soon as well, and this was also kindly sent to me by Wattpad Books, so once again, a big thank you to them. And it says that it's a hidden attractions novel, and it follows two characters who can either play by the rules or change them completely. Ethan has dedicated his high school years to football, so it is a sports romance, and he's trying to start fresh in college and rebuild his life. He is doing great until he meets Maya Garcia, who's living next door, and she's the girl that he never got over. He's always had a crush on her, and she broke his heart and disappeared. She's finally free of her parents' very strict rules, and she's ready to embrace college life, but she ends up realizing that Ethan is her next door neighbor, and things are going to get very complicated. So it's basically a college second chance romance. This sounds super cute, and I'm excited to dive into this. Hopefully I will end up liking this one a lot. I'm hoping to get some of the vibes that I got from Unloved by Peyton Corinne, which I absolutely adored that book. So I'm hoping that this will be like a new favorite college romance for me. I was very kindly sent The Dramatic Life of Jonah Penrose from Harper Perennial, so thank you so much to HarperCollins and specifically Harper Perennial for sending me a copy of this. I'm so excited to dive into this. It's described as being very similar to Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is an LGBTQ+ romance, and it's from a debut author. I absolutely adored Red, White, and Royal Blue last year when I read it, so I can't wait to dive into this one, and hopefully I will enjoy it just as much as I enjoyed that one. It says that after winning his first Olivier Award for his performance in West End's top musical, The Wooden Horse, Jonah Penrose is a rising star in London's theatre scene, but his success can't erase the pain of a recent breakup, fix his self-doubt, or remedy his father's ailing mind. And then we also have Dexter Ellis, who is West End's golden boy, is the newest cast member of The Wooden Horse, and they find each other to be very intolerable and arrogant. Everything about Dexter is infuriatingly perfect. He has very dashing good looks, and he has very cutting notes on Jonah's performances. And he was also supposed to play Jonah's enemy on the show, but his role ends up switching to the love interest after one of the other cast members ends up getting sick. So Jonah wants to stay as far away from Dexter as possible, but they end up having a lot of unstaged tension and chemistry, which brings them together. And their producer ends up wanting to push them together to convince the world that they are in love. So they have to reluctantly pretend to be together, and yet as Jonah and Dexter get to know each other better, they realize that there's more than meets the eye between the two of them, and the fiction of what they have to play in these roles starts to blur with the reality, and they start having feelings for each other. So it sounds so cute. I really like the fake dating aspects to this. This is giving me a little bit of the fiance farce vibes, in the sense that they're kind of thrown together by expectations. In the fiance farce, it's more like family and friends expectations, but in this one, it's because of their careers. But I think it'll be a really cute one. I'm hoping that it'll live up to the comparison with Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I'm just excited for this. Okay, the next book is A Moth to the Flame, and I was very kindly sent this by the author, so thank you so much to them for sending me a copy of this. And this is part of the Utopia series, and I can't wait to dive into this. I think this is going to be my next read, so you'll definitely be hearing more about this book very soon. It says that after a decade of not so blissful escape, 30-year-old Cordelia McCoy returns to her small Appalachian hometown to bury her only family. She expects the townsfolk to be indifferent to her, but she doesn't expect Duke Castellaw, who's the only person has ever given her the time of day. He hasn't outgrown his obsession with tormenting her, and when he pushes things too far, she does something that she's never done before. She fights back, egging his precious truck and adds fuel to his fire, so she makes a wish at the storied town well that Duke would no longer exist. And they end up walking a mile in each other's shoes, which shows them everything that they've ever believed about each other has always been a lie. And there's some more sinister things going on in this town of Utopia. There is this legend about the Mothman, but he isn't just a legend, and they find out that witches are actually real. Cat clocks are coming alive, and they uncover a very hidden world that is blurring the line between love and hate. This sounds like a really interesting, darker romance kind of vibe with some fantasy supernatural elements to it. I'm so excited about this. I'm incredibly intrigued just by the synopsis and the things that the author has shared about this book, so I can't wait to dive into this one. I'm hoping to be reading this very soon, and then I'll be sharing my thoughts on this by the end of July. Okay, so the last book that I wanted to mention is Teddy by Emily Duncan. This is a historical fiction, which is something that is perfect to include in this reading vlog, and it's set in the summer of 1969 in Rome. There's so much glamour and intrigue going on. There are stars dancing and drinking, rubbing shoulders with royalty and American expats, and Teddy Carlisle is fresh off a plane from Texas with her new husband, and she's trying to get a fresh start in life. In Rome, she wants to be good. She wants to wear the right clothes and the perfect lipstick and charm her husband's colleagues, and she is good until the 4th of July when her new life explodes above her head, and she's caught on camera in the arms of an American ambassador just before she ends up spotting a man from the darkest corners of her past, and there is evidence of her depravity on film. So she's trying to recover these photographs and keep her reputation intact, and she ends up descending into the deeper underbelly of the city. So this sounds really intriguing. It sounds like there's a lot of drama going on in this. I want to know more about Teddy's mysterious past in this one and what she's trying to hide about herself, because clearly she's had some wrongdoing in the past and she's trying to make up for it and move forward. But of course, the past has a way of coming back to haunt her. I'm just so excited for this one. I don't think I've read a historical fiction set in Rome, and I thought that Rome was such a beautiful place when I was able to visit it. I am really intrigued by this and how the Hollywood glitz and glamour kind of stuff is going to play into this one. Hopefully this is one that will keep me engaged and will keep me guessing all the way throughout. Alright, so that's going to be it for this readathon vlog. I know I didn't get a lot of other footage outside of just me in front of this bookshelf, but hopefully I'll be able to do better the next time. And I'm glad to have been able to participate in this readathon hosted by Christy Reads a Lot and Tori from Novel Life. Thank you so much to both of them for hosting this. I had a really great time participating in it, and it definitely motivated me to read at a faster pace than I normally do and try to get to some more books on my TBR. While I didn't end up finishing all of the prompts, I just had a great time doing this. It was a great challenge to kind of push myself a little bit. So thank you so much if you made it to this point. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you have, leave me like a little quill emoji to show me that you've made it to this point in the video. And I think that a quill is perfect for historical fiction. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all of you, and wherever you're in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye!